Hello and welcome to Saturday Morning Cartoons, the weekly podcast that revisits, reviews, and ridicules some of the world's weirdest animated series. Coming to you from high atop Castle Wyvern, I'll be your host, Dave Drumbore. Joining me as always, my co-host, Sean Hoboken Ellis. How are you tonight, sir?
David, I'm doing well. How about yourself, man?
Doing pretty good, buddy. I'm excited about this. Episode 50, ladies and gentlemen.
Episode 50.
We're not fucking around. Episode 50. Hey,
I mean, we've been fucking around for 49 episodes.
Yeah, this is a warm-up.
We're gonna nail this.
This is the serious talk now. Hey, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you have a couple of wingmen over on your side of things to help out tonight.
I do.
Yeah.
I have a local improviser and comedian, Jamal Newman, who's returning.
Woo! Welcome back.
Shout out to all wall paintings.
And we have local DC area artist, Melanie Harker, who is joining us for the first time.
Welcome to the show.
Thanks. Long-time listener, first-time caller.
Oh, I like it. Happy to have you. Happy to have you. Pop quiz hotshot. What's your favorite episode so far?
Oh, that is Ren and Stimpy.
Really? Interesting.
Yeah, when I tell everybody to listen to this podcast, I say, okay, I know you should start chronologically, but really start with Ren and Stimpy.
Yeah, I would go with that and not chronologically because that first episode is a mess for a variety of reasons. So if I've got this straight, then Alex Capis is our number one draw to this show because he's been on literally one time.
Yeah, I didn't say that.
I'm hearing it. I'm hearing it come
No,
through. No, that's cool. Totally fine. Totally good guy, I guess. Whatever. Real handsome
I could have
devil.
sworn she also said she loved Jason Wheeled Warriors.
I think she did say.
She did say that
She said she
loved
really
I
loved
caught
the
that.
Jason the Wheeled Warriors
Yeah, I
episode.
caught that.
And
undertone.
I love anything Allison Keene is on.
Oh, fantastic. All right, now we're all back in the good graces now.
Okay,
Yeah. Hey, just go listen to everything, guys.
doing well.
Listen to everything we do.
Oh my god, but 50th episode.
Yeah,
and
crazy.
I could not be more excited.
Dude, and I literally just got a 1 year birthday notice from our, when we signed on and we did all our subscriptions, all this stuff so we can bring you guys this podcast each and every week. I just got a sort of like a 1 year happy birthday anniversary thing from them. So that was kind of cool and kind of crazy to think that we've been doing this for a year. So yeah,
Who did you get the email from?
just random bots that run different sites that I pay money to.
I got one from Tumblr the other day saying happy 1 year, and that was
That's one
very
I got.
exciting.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And a bunch of sex bots that have nothing to do with this podcast, but they just check in on me every once in a while.
That's cute.
Yeah. Isn't it nice?
Make sure the credit card still works.
Yeah, exactly.
Those reoccurring payments just coming rolling in.
It's like, we noticed a low balance the other day, buddy. Just checking to make sure you're still buying them coins. Anyway.
Move some funds around.
Bitcoins.
Jokes on them. Dave's really just a bot himself.
That's true. That's true. Bots on bots.
We waited 50 episodes to be able to reveal that little fun fact.
Which is actually timely because I don't want to give anything away, but there might be some sort of robotic spoiler in this episode.
Yeah, it was a good lead-in.
Yeah, I think it was pretty good. So obviously we're talking sex bots and gargoyles tonight. That'll be
Solid.
that'll be the show.
It's a solid segue.
Thank you so much, Jamal. I've been working on it.
We are, in fact, talking Disney's Gargoyles this evening.
Yeah, and honestly, I've been excited about this one for a while, but we wanted to wait for like a milestone episode because it feels bigger than it is. Probably, doing some of the research, it seems like a lot of the fandoms and things that are out there for there were conventions for a number of years, but that's been defunct for 5 or 6 years now. There were comic books and video games and a lot of paraphernalia that was out there, but in the last few years. There hasn't really been anything. So in my mind, this was huge because I'm still stuck in like mid-90s. But apparently these days nobody gives a shit. So I'm hoping that the listeners out there remember this fondly. I was thrilled to find that, upon revisiting this series, every bit as good as I remembered. There's a few things that we'll definitely talk about in the show that are a little wonky, but yeah, really solid. Easily the best thing we've watched on this show so far.
Yeah.
What do you think,
I will say, I feel very similar, Dave, that I enjoyed this series, and I think that's the consensus in the room right now.
Yeah.
Is that we enjoyed the series. I will say that there are some points of interest that are in the show that kind of continued to make me raise an eyebrow.
Yeah.
And so I guess that's the nicest way to say there were some moments that were a little bit wonky.
Oh yeah, it's not perfect by any means, but
yeah.
relative to all the other 49 things we've covered, yeah.
Oh man.
What's so funny for me is I distinctly remember this being somehow connected to the Hunchback of Notre Dame movie because of the 3 comedic gargoyles that are in that.
Right.
But upon looking up the timeline of that, because I effing loved that movie as a kid, and I love this TV series, but they're came out like in 96 and this show went till 97.
Right.
But I was definitely watching the show when it was on television, so I don't know
Well,
what
let me-
Baby Mel convinced herself of.
Let me ask you this though: did you read Disney Adventures back in the day?
Yes.
No,
Remember
I
that
didn't.
magazine?
Oh my gosh.
Okay, because I was reading into the mythology a little bit for the show, both the in canon stuff and the behind the scenes stuff and all the marketing that came out with obviously a Disney property, weirdly tied in with Marvel at the same time too, which was we'll get into that later. But Mel, there actually was a Hunchback of Notre Dame tie-in for the Disney movie when that came out. There was a
Damn.
story from Disney Adventures called The Experts, and I don't have much more on it than that, but it was a tie-in, so it was like a marketing tie-in for that movie. So you could easily be remembering that too.
That's
Might all be part of it.
yeah,
Yeah.
crazy.
Well, we've kind of got you on the barometer here for Gargoyle, so before I get into the history of it, I want to ask Jamal kind of where are you coming from with your experience with Gargoyles?
Well, I remember watching this as a kid, but I think other than, again, this may have been another one of those cartoons that I had to sit through it to get to Spider-Man or one of the cartoons I really wanted to watch.
Interesting.
It wasn't like in my top five.
Just
that's
not
for
your
sure.
thing. Okay.
Okay.
Interesting. That'll be good.
You were waiting for Hercules to come on, weren't you?
Not Digimon and like
Digimon, yeah.
and
Oh, don't even get Dave started on
those
No,
Digimon
don't.
cartoons when I was like Sonic was still on. Like
Yeah, Sonic, and then we're definitely going to cover like the Digimon. We're going to cover all the kind of like Pocket Monster shows at some point. We'll probably make a month out of it because there's so much craziness that
boy.
goes
but I
on.
definitely remember this cartoon.
Oh,
like
man.
just being on it, like my TV would be on, and I'd be like, oh, I'm catching up on this.
Dude,
So I
yeah.
have to say this as a fun fact
Shoot.
for Jamal is so having lived with Dave for a short period of
Oh,
time.
no, I knew
and
this was coming.
Having known him for
Long
over
time.
over 10 years now.
Yep.
Humble brag.
Humble brag.
Yeah. Not everybody can know me for that long.
Friendship brag. Dave has a particular Digimon that he
Oh,
loves
no.
to scream, and so he just will randomly walk around and he just go Kabu Terrimon.
Oh, he was my favorite. You stole my thunder.
Well,
You jerk.
I'm not gonna pimp you into doing it, man. I'm not
Well,
gonna-
I mean, you don't have to pimp real hard. I say it at the drop of a hat, drop
Well,
of a
please
towel
go-
sometimes.
please go ahead.
No, the moment's passed. I feel like you like Garurumon. Is that correct?
the who?
Garurumon.
No, I don't think so.
You're not a Garurumon?
No, I'll be honest with you. I this is a total sidebar, but I did watch the first episode of Digimon about 5 months ago, and I had no idea. I did not remember how heavy-handed the message is
Oh, yeah.
Ooh.
in that first episode about pollution.
Dude, if you think you hear a lot about global warming these days, just take a trip back to Digimon and, man. But for another day.
Oh my gosh. To get rid of this segue, can you give us a little bit more about the history of the show, Dave?
I would be happy to. So, Gargoyles, American animated series produced by Walt Disney Television Animation and Buena Vista Television. Originally aired from October of 1994 to February of 1997 for a total of 78 half-hour episodes, 3 seasons. The first season, I believe, was only about 12 episodes, and that includes this first pretty epic 5-episode introductory pilot that we all watched for this podcast, and they eventually kind
that
of...
was ambitious.
I mean, huge. It's almost half your season. Like, that's your first season, and the first half of it is the introduction to the rest of the show. But it was great. I mean, we'll talk about it, obviously, during the course of the show, but they eventually kind of packaged it together as a movie. And that was called Awakening. I think they changed it for... The movie title was actually Gargoyles Heroes Reborn or something to that effect. But, yeah, did pretty well. Enough to get 2 more seasons out of it, which... Fans will differ what's in canon, what they think of is really the core of the show, whether it ended in season 2 or whether they include season 3 as part of it. But besides the
Those
point,
gargoyle forums are brutal.
they are brutal, man. You gotta
Be careful if you're going to go.
have a thick skin in there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, do you know the detail behind season 3 of Gargoyle?
I didn't want to get too much into it, but Sean, if you have a
Well,
quick...
because it was Gargoyle : Goliath, correct?
Yeah, it was Gargoyles: The Goliath Chronicles. Yeah,
Yeah, it was Gargoyles Tokyo Drift.
Tokyo Drift.
So
Yeah.
it kind of goes it goes a little bit of a different path.
Oddly
for that.
enough, directed by James Wan. Pretty strange out of the gates there, but yeah. Actually, I would love to have him actually direct this film, but besides the point. This one's kind of interesting because by the time I got to season 3, it was muddled with a bunch of new writers and directors and creators. But honestly, the series overall, it doesn't really have a true creator credit. A fellow by the name of Greg Weisman, who was an English teacher who was working at Disney, and he kind of pitched some of the ideas, but other people kind of pitched them too. It seemed like one of these things that was a real collaborative effort, but nobody really put the final stamp on it. Fans, as far as I can tell, really look to him as sort of the central point to getting the show off the ground. I did not mean to do that, but there it is. There's my first pun of the night. Yeah, sorry guys, it's gonna be one of those nights.
Oh no, I missed it.
No, it's fine. Guess what? You can listen to this episode when it goes live and hear it over and over again.
And he said that he was looking forward to getting it off the ground.
Yeah.
I thought he was going to make a rock bottom joke, but
No, not yet. We'll save it.
I mean, that's probably number 2.
I'll put that back.
Or
in
that right there was number
That
2.
there it was. We got a counter.
I'm a seasoned vet, so I let all these just die.
Yeah. He knows better than to chime in. He just lets us struggle to death out here. Smart man, smart man. So we've got Greg Weisman as the sort of creator behind the series, but then for the first season, almost all the episodes, 12 out of 13 episodes, are written by a husband and wife team by the name of Michael and Bryn Chandler Reeves. And I think that lends itself to the really cohesive narrative of this first season, especially with that 5-episode opener that we saw. So a lot of things kind of came together to make this first season really strong and then grow it over the next season. But we won't get too much into the other seasons because we just watched that first 5-episode parter. Now to tell you what the show is actually about, I'm going to turn it back over to Sean.
Thank you, Dave.
Sure.
So the series follows a species of nocturnal creatures known as gargoyles that turn to stone during the day. It focuses mainly on the clan leader named Goliath. So it starts out in the first episode with a flashback to the year 994.
Yep.
This clan of gargoyles, they live in a castle in medieval Scotland alongside of humans, until many of them are killed by a betrayal, and the remainder are magically frozen in stone until the castle, quote, rises above the clouds. A millennium later, in 1994, billionaire David Xanatos.
So good.
Do you want to know how I know he was going to be the villain?
How? How'd you figure that out?
His name started with an X.
There it is.
I feel like the lower you get, in the alphabet, numerically or alphabetically, the more probability. If you have an X, Y, or a Z name, I'm going to almost 99.99 with the bar repeating guarantee that you are eventually going to become the series antagonist. If you are a male,
yes,
there are female. Obviously, Xena Warrior Princess.
Yes.
Sean's saying that because I brought this up earlier to debunk.
There's also Zorro.
But there's also
Ooh,
Zorro.
there's also
and
Zorro.
Zeus.
I feel like Sean,
I
this
wanna
is
say-
like a new thesis for you that you have to defend now.
Zeus was a dick, and Zorro was really
Listen.
not a hero. I feel like that's like one man's hero is another
What?
man's criminal.
Who's not a hero?
Who's not a-
Zorro's not a hero?
Zorro's not a hero?
I think there's an entire country underneath America that would disagree.
What country would that be?
Guatemala.
Okay.
And the History Buff Award goes to
Jamal Newman.
Oh, you guys spelled my name right. Good job.
So billionaire David Xanatos purchases the Gargoyles Castle and has it reconstructed atop his New York City skyscraper. Awakening.
Let that
the
sink
system-
in for a second. Yeah, if
Yeah.
you haven't seen the show, just
This-
think about that
this
for a moment.
I messaged Dave
Oh,
today and I said the status of wealth that I want to acquire is castle moving wealth.
Look, I want to dub
castle
it. I
moving
want to
money.
dub it Xanatosian. Can we do that? A Xanatosian level of wealth. That's what I would like.
Xanatosian level of wealth.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll go with
You
that.
need to win like all of the Mega Millions and Powerballs for the next straight year, I think, to get to Xanatosian levels of wealth, if not more.
I mean, it is ridiculous to have the
Ridiculous.
money to be able to just pick up a castle in Scotland.
Even in 1994.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, think about inflation. I
The
mean,
internet is still being figured out, but we got this castle moving thing locked up.
Locked
Don't
down.
Just dump it on top of a skyscraper.
and we improved the Heidelberg in order to be able to bring it over to New York. So everything's under control, everybody.
look, I feel like you guys are getting way too hung up in the technical aspect of this show.
I'm so sorry.
Because honestly, we have nocturnal creatures that are coming to life at sunset.
What about that is weird?
Yeah.
Okay.
Have you ever been to a Catholic church?
I'm waiting for this.
Thank you, Jamal.
Damn you, Newman. So, atop of this Xanatonian amount of money,
Yes.
this New York skyscraper, these 6 remaining gargoyles come to life. In attempting to adjust to their new world, they're aided by a sympathetic NYPD detective, Detective Maza, and they quickly come into conflict with with plotting Xanatos. In addition to dealing with the gargoyles' attempt to adjust to the modern New York City, the series also incorporates various supernatural threats to their safety and to the world at large.
Now that was a good rundown. I think maybe you glossed over one little thing though.
Hit me with it.
Melanie, can you tell me a little bit about Detective Maza? Because Sean he didn't mention her first name for some reason. I find that interesting.
About her first name?
Wait, you skipped over the woman character?
Oh, the
lead
woman, the
detective
lead-
character?
No,
it
he said
it's
Detective Maza.
Detective Maza.
Yeah.
Hey, what's her first name?
Oh,
though?
thank you,
Women have
Jamal.
names. They're
Her
not
name is-
detective. They're
isn't
not
it
their
like-
Yeah,
job.
detective's
and their
not her
last
name.
They
Sean.
have the first name, Sean.
It's
Treat her with
Eliza. It's
respect.
Eliza Maza.
No, it's Alyssa.
It's Alyssa.
It's
She was
Alyssa
just taking
Maza.
liberties with her first name. This is
Who?
amazing, folks. Amazing.
Who I want to point out, monumental breakthrough. She's a Latina woman, which I had another heated dispute about because I thought that they made her Pantone shade a little too light, but then I looked it up and it was pretty accurate.
That was pretty good. Got some swatches out and did some tests. And
Yeah.
There's a
No, it is interesting because we were watching.
yeah,
We were as we were watching some of these episodes. They are very. A lot of the show happens at night, and so it's very poorly lit.
Right.
And so
intentionally so. Like it's just a
Yes,
dark,
intentionally.
gothic kind of looking show. Yeah.
And so Detective Maza has dark jet black hair. And so in certain moments, in order to kind of counter or contrast that, the darkness of her hair, they make some of it blue to show sort of the outline.
Yeah, like a highlight
And
almost.
so-
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it was very interesting just to watch because as I'm watching this, I'm like, yeah, Detective Maza is a Hispanic woman.
Yeah.
And Melanie's like, absolutely not. This is
Oh,
not.
really? Interesting.
She just looks like a very tan.
I was just like, she just gone to Hollywood tans a couple too many times,
Oh,
but
no. She's definitely Latin. You see
Definitely.
those jeans?
Yeah.
listen,
You
mom
see
jeans can be
those
worn by
jeans.
anyone of any race.
In 1994, I don't know.
J-Lo started that back in 94, and they've been rocking it ever since.
I don't know about
She
that.
had incredible mom jeans, and
What about that Mom V? That
Oh
She-
yeah, on camel toe.
V-neck.
she
Oh,
was
no.
sporting that camel toe. Like, whoa, it was incredible.
I think this might be the first time cartoon camel toe has come up on this show. So
it is.
mark it down. 50th episode. Took us that long to get here.
And so many crotch shots. Like they
Yeah.
were just, for all of the advancement they had made with her, like, and she's a kick butt character, she's taking on those dudes in the park and stuff. And then it's like jump cut to her crotch.
I honestly
Back to
didn't even
dialogue.
notice that.
Back to dialogue. Back
Oh
to
yeah,
crotch.
there was a lot of butt and
A
crotch.
lot
Really?
of cute butt. There was a lot of cute butt shots.
The hip to the side kind of thing as she's posing.
No,
No, there
just
was
like
some full on like
Just full
flat,
butt.
flat back, apple bottom.
Interesting.
It was cute.
The
is
Apple
also
Bottom
a
Jeans
genius
song
song.
was actually written about Detective Elisa Maza.
There you go.
Bringing it around.
Bring it all back. I thought you were going to say that we had skipped over in the synopsis how much of a xenophobic parable this effing show is. Because this show is like, don't be afraid of people who are different from you.
Yeah, basically.
And like projected it in neon lights.
Which I, of course, took as to mean black people. Because what is the curse of the castle is they turn to stone and they don't get their life back until they rise above the clouds,
Right.
which I thought was like them saying, once you learn how to rise above the white clouds,
oh, shit.
blinding your future.
there was
Oh,
a lot.
shit.
There was a lot of hidden subtext in this show.
That's all I'm saying. I look at everything through a racial lens, so that's why.
No, Jamal, I appreciate that.
No, that is
I
good.
accept your
Thank
racial
you.
commenting.
Thank you for accepting.
That is very good.
Thank you.
That's very good.
I don't even
Dave,
know.
how
No,
you-
I have no idea
Dave,
where to go
Dave,
with that.
how are you
I
feeling
want to
about
welcome
this?
Jamal to our podcast Above the Clouds, but I feel like that's it's inappropriate.
Moving on up. See, there's other things there. Jefferson's got their start from this problem.
They had an apartment that was very.
moving on.
They
Oh my
did.
gosh.
They were moving it up
To a perch in the sky, maybe.
until Xanatos bought their building and leveled it to the ground with them inside.
We finally got a piece of that pie
Ooh.
in the sky.
Solid.
This
solid
guy.
input.
Well done.
Solid.
There are a lot of idioms being thrown around in this room right now. I'm into all of them.
I don't even know where to start.
Oh boy.
Hey, actually, I do want to jump to one thing here because I don't know. Did you guys get a chance to listen to the intro and theme from the series itself? I know they didn't have it in these episodes because it was kind of like a mini movie. Did you guys get a chance to
I
listen?
looked at it right before
Okay, cool.
we started when you sent it.
Give me your kind of gut reaction to that because it's, well, I'm not going to say. I don't want to. Yeah.
Well, it seemed very serious in tone.
Yes.
And I want to say that it almost like if I remember watching this as a kid, I would not want to watch this show at night by myself when the opening's coming on.
That's pretty intense.
It's kind of got like an X-Files kind of feel for like a cartoon. Like it's very like ominous and dark and gloomy. There's no cheerfulness at all.
Well, I mean, it's basically got these massive fanged and clawed creatures either hovering over you and roaring or climbing basically through your television right at you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and
to like all this,
making that clawing sound, dude. That
dude, and I loved as a little kid. I always loved how that was timed, like with the music, like his claw strikes. So, in this intro, Goliath is like climbing the side of a building, but all you see is his claws just mashing into the brick and the concrete as he's scaling the building, and the claw strikes are always timed to the music, and I just love that as a kid. It just made it all the more powerful to me. So I love this intro.
Which I want to say that if he's doing that when he's climbing, every time he grabs someone, he's tearing into their flesh.
Their heads just come right off.
Just so that everyone's aware.
Yeah.
He just doesn't understand how much pressure
Just shattered bones littering the streets.
Like brick. He
He's
can just destroy it. Anytime he grabs anyone, his pointy hands are going right through them.
And he grabs a lot of people in these episodes, too.
Yeah.
He grabs
primarily
everyone.
how they fight.
Yeah, except that he scoops Alyssa Maza.
Yeah,
He does scoop. He does scoop her. Yeah.
He has a lot of scooping.
He does a lot of scooping. He throws her on his back, sometimes grudgingly, sometimes not so grudgingly. There's a lot of scooping, and there's a lot of Beauty and the Beast stuff going on here.
There's a lot of Beauty and the Beast
Whole
stuff.
lot.
Oh my god.
I read something under Elisa's character description. She was like, police detective, her family features into a lot of the plots, and then she's later a love interest for Goliath. And I had to say, well, hold on a second here. What? I don't understand how that works. We'll talk about some of the other characters in a second.
No.
Again, this is my point.
I don't
think
know.
the gargoyles are black people. So I think the love
Continue.
interest
Please
is more of
continue.
a social commentary.
Oh, I see.
Oh, they look at us and this shouldn't be happening in the 90s.
Oh, I see.
This is like 1994 commentary on interracial dating.
Yes.
I'm into it.
But she's not white.
It's still interracial.
Still interracial, Sean.
Still interracial.
Jeez,
I
Sean.
just no. I mean,
what's her name again, Sean? Just to make sure that you know, because you called her detective. What was her first name?
My name is Scene.
No, her name.
Oh,
What is the female character lead's name?
Eliza.
There you go. Good job.
That's close.
That
Close
was so
enough.
hard for him. Could you feel that? I could feel that from here. It was like really hard for him to say.
No, I'm uncomfortable.
Okay. Well, welcome to my every week. But no, it is interesting. I mean, they really do hammer the kids over the head with the sort of the racial undertones and the xenophobia, like you mentioned before. But at the same time, it's not being delivered in just a PSA at the end of an episode or a mixed message throughout the episode. It's actually done fairly well within the narrative of the story.
Yeah, I think they did it pretty seamlessly
Yeah.
and in a way that is so sort of epic. Like Jamal was saying about it's sort of sad and serious, but really it's sort of like Shakespearean, which
Very much so.
which I've seen a lot of reference to, and that's pretty evident by all of their names being pretty crazy.
Well, yeah, and especially since they start kind of like in the Scottish medieval period, and there's a lot of references to Macbeth. There's even a character who's just straight up Macbeth later on in the series. They do a lot of sort of the Mists of Avalon and a lot of the they bring in supernatural things, and they bring in a lot of folklore from sort of the medieval religions and things like that, the cult kind of religions. So this show goes heavy into Gothic and Shakespearean and mythological roots. They stay away from that for the most part for these few episodes, though. It's a very kind of contemporary story, at least as far as Xanatos is concerned.
Well, besides the tale of like betrayal in
Yes,
that way
yes.
and being led astray and all of that kind of like that's very
Oh, that's timeless. Yeah, and that was great. I thought that fit in really, really well, and we can get to that plot discussion. But before we move on to we'll talk about some more of the characters. Anything else from that intro theme? If you guys haven't watched it, listeners out there, if you don't quite know what I'm talking about, just definitely go check it out, because first of all, it's not only your intro to what the show is going to look like aesthetically, it's your introduction to motherfucking Keith David and his incredible voice as he voices Goliath through this entire series.
Yes.
And that, like, to me, man, that guy is Goliath.
Yeah.
Like, you can't, no matter how good Goliath is or how good his writing is, or the action he gets in these episodes, it's Keith David's voice that really brings it home for me. So
every character that he's the voice of, no one can replace him.
no,
And like he's the arbiter in Halo, in the Halo series.
exactly. And you can't. I mean, he's
can't
just
replace
one of a
that.
kind. Yeah,
He's Big Tim in Requiem for a Dream.
yeah, which is slightly more disturbing than
Yeah.
Gargoyles, but yeah,
He's the one.
he's the Navy guy, isn't he?
I'm gonna screw this up. He's the one guy. He's the imam in the Chronicles of Riddick
Right.
and Pitch Black movies.
And he was in. He was just in Cloud Atlas. I mean, he's got a list of titles, a mile long. He's also the voice of the U.S. Navy, isn't that him? Doesn't he do the U.S. Navy commercials?
Oh, he
wow.
totally
Yeah.
does. You're
Wow,
right.
Strong.
Yeah. So I mean, there you go. That's really all you need to know. If you have heard his voice before, but if you didn't know it was him, just go look for like his clips and stuff, because the guy's amazing. Absolutely
He's an amazing actor.
Yeah.
So
hire him. Yeah. So
I want to pause. I hope you are now representing him.
I am. He doesn't know yet, but I'm representing him.
If you're
the card-
interested in Keith for an upcoming gig,
Mr.
please,
David.
please call.
Mr. David, yes, please.
Mr. Keith.
Mr.
So
David.
formal.
I'm very familiar.
She's on a first name
First name
basis with him. It's
basis.
fine. It's
Keith and I
fine.
have coffee sometimes. So,
Detective Keith David. Yeah.
Detective Keith.
K-Cups with Keith.
Oh,
I'd want to be on that show.
Yeah, that would be a great morning show.
It'd be a great morning show.
You'd just be sitting there. All right, I have my coffee. Let's talk about the news.
Do you remember? Can you hit us with any lines from him as the arbiter for Halo?
Demon.
I think he says that in this episode too. Doing double duty there.
oh my god.
No, and I even had designs of like trying to do this intro, because it's just like a narration of like, hey, here's what's going on, here's where the gargoyles are right now. I didn't even want to attempt it, because you cannot replicate this guy's voice.
Yeah,
He's just one of a kind. But yeah, so let's jump into the characters a little bit here before we get to the plot discussion. So interesting, at least I thought it was interesting at the outset. Like Sean mentioned, we are introduced to these characters kind of, 1,000 years in the past. It's the first time we meet the characters themselves. But with the exception of one of them, none of them have names.
Right.
Nobody's got a name.
Well, I will say that there. I will mention this. Well, no, I'll get into this right now.
Get into it.
There is this moment that is later on in an episode. I think it's episode maybe 3 or 4.
Yeah, and we'll just kind of
Where-
like consider that one piece. We'll just consider it
Right.
like a one movie, because it's tough to distinguish. Yeah.
So Hudson makes a comment saying that you humans feel the need to put a name to everything, and unless it has a name, you don't qualify it. You don't consider it to be real. And it was I don't know. I've recently gotten into the podcast Invisibilia, which has an episode that talks about being able to name things and
Right.
put them in buckets, and it's absolutely 100% true. The fact that they had to ask, well, like, what do you call these people? And they're
Right.
just like, well, we call them friends.
Yeah.
Like, what do you
Which
call
is
each
super
other?
cheesy, but I mean, it's to the point. And then they even say, like, the Vikings or whatever, they're like, well, how do you tell each other apart if you don't have names? He's like, well, we look kind of different, so we know who, like, each of us are. Just like, yeah. I mean, this isn't like The Room, where every time somebody walks in, you're like, oh, hi, Mark. Like, you don't have to, you don't have to, like, spell out their names every single time. So it's like, yeah, we're friends, and we've known each other for, like, decades, so.
And you're also a Viking, so your life is not going to be that long, probably.
Right.
Probs, which is true in this case. But for the sake of the show, we will be talking about them by their names, because it's very difficult to not do that. So,
Well, I think the larger point is that as a child
Yes.
watching this show, the impact of that statement would have never resonated with me the way that it did as a 34-year-old
Right,
man. I was
right.
like, oh shit, that is some
That's some deep shit.
Yeah.
Well, look,
Yeah.
I think the thing is with kids when they watch this, I feel like they might not understand that they got a certain message, but the way that they deliver it and how it kind of fits within the story, I feel like kids, they get it even if they can't articulate it. Now, that being said, it also plays back, interestingly, in our discussions of all these terrible cartoons that we watch. You're introduced to a guy and he's just like, oh man, I can't even think of like a good example. He's, oh, my name's Krolos. It's like, who the fuck, like, who named you Krulos? That's like really setting you up for a certain way of life. And all these other characters are just, they're brought in, they're like, this is his name, and it's his name because it's going to help sell a toy. And I thought it was really refreshing and interesting that the gargoyles didn't do that. Now, eventually they do, because they need to, for the sake of the show, they need to be able to call them different things, and especially for the kids to kind of identify with them. But I thought that was interesting, and Sean, I definitely agree with your point there.
Yeah, it was just I loved the gargoyle that becomes known as Hudson.
Right.
He makes reference to, he says, kind of gesturing at the sky. He says, does the sky need a name? Does this river need a name? And I don't know, maybe they name things differently in Scotland.
No.
Maybe
No, I doubt it.
No.
maybe I just didn't.
There's just a lot more like phlegmy sounds and a lot of brogue. That's all.
No, I mean, just the point being that as he's making this grand gesture to how we name and how we put things in buckets in order to understand them, I would have never gotten that as a child.
No, definitely
And
not.
that is such an important statement to make, especially this day and age when we have so many people who are identifying as things that are other than like male and female,
Right.
in so many different
labels.
ways.
I would say more like
Yeah,
the
it's
term
just-
labels. I've always had an issue with labels. Names, I think, are kind of necessary because of a communication, from a communication aspect. Like I could sit here and I could be talking to Melanie and just be like, Melanie, here's a story about this guy. He's a redheaded guy. He's mid-30s. He does stand-up, or he does improv. Oh, I apologize. And or I could just be like,
snap.
hey, Sean. And she's like, oh yeah, I know Sean. And then she knows Sean, and she forms this image in her mind, in her memory, of everything that kind of encompasses Sean. So it's a stand-in for a larger experience.
It's we could get into this discussion. I think
Apparently
that's a very
we are.
modern. We're into it.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty modern idea,
Right.
because if you think about the internet is shorthanding names and categories for different things that allow us to access larger information.
Right.
But there is, oh my gosh, now I'm like trying to reach into the depths of my anthropology minor to remember which philosopher was the one who talked about naming objects to reaffirm their existence. So I think that there is a very Western idea that like if you name this table in front of you, I name you are a thing, but instead of just referencing you, I name you table. Therefore, you actually exist. And you are a thing that exists in this realm. We can all see it. We can all agree that this is called table, and thus language is born,
Right,
basically,
exactly.
from that.
Right.
But so I think there's something about being given a name or naming a person that allows like ownership, and also, again, like that reaffirmation of like, I see you, you exist. Oh, John Stuart Mill, he's my boy. Thank you so much, Sean, for pulling that up on the internet for me. You should go look him up, kids. John Stuart Mill.
And it actually makes me think of like how we name our pets. And this is the last tangent I'll go off on, but it's kind of like how we name our pet. Like pets don't give a shit. Like they'll know when you're calling them, whatever. They don't care if their name's Kevin or Rutabaga. They don't care. They don't know.
Aren't they actually listening to the inflection in your voice?
Yeah.
Not really.
Yeah, just kind of like the reinforced
Typically.
pattern and and all that stuff. So this has been Dog Tricks and Gargoyles Philosophy with Saturday Morning Cartoons.
The end of that comment is just that I really enjoy that the gargoyles, I mean, there's in some way like they are named by humans, but then
Right.
at the very end you see that they are giving themselves names.
Right.
And I think that that's a really important, they didn't make any distinction there, but I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, and honestly, the
think that
only
was a very strong
reason
choice.
that's kind of like watered down just slightly with Hudson is because he goes through this kind of grandstanding, like, why do you feel like you have to name everything? And then she's like, oh, that's the Hudson River, and he's like, all right, if I got to be named something, I guess I'll just be that. So he's like,
That
now
was-
I'm Hudson.
That was an intentional pun, wasn't it, Dave?
Wait, which part did I miss? My own pun?
Watered
Oh
down.
my God, I'm not even trying to do this. I've got pun in my blood. I got pun genes.
He's gonna high five.
No, don't
I'm a
encourage
hot
me.
guy for puns.
Don't encourage me. I need an intervention. Okay, so this is obviously set in New York. So we've got Goliath is kind of one of the outliers here because he's already been named, and he's like, yeah, they just kind of named me. I don't know. It's just a thing that these humans do. So now we've got Hudson. You guys want to roll through kind of the rest of the gargoyles here? Pick your
Sure,
pick your
we have-
favorite, whoever you want.
We have Hudson, who's voiced by Ed
The
Asner.
best.
Oh, the best.
Rest in peace.
We have Brooklyn, who is his second in command. And Jamal, what's your feeling on Brooklyn?
West Side? What?
Okay,
Interesting.
That's my thoughts on Brooklyn.
that's your thoughts on
Just
Brooklyn.
slick back here.
Oh boy.
I honestly, out of all of the characters in the episodes that we watched, though, I got the least characterization from Brooklyn. Do you guys agree?
I like Brooklyn because he's just mild mannered.
He's a mild-mannered
Kinda-
gargoyle. Tries to hail a taxi cab.
He's kind of like the voice of reason in some of the stuff when he's hanging out with the other two troublemakers.
Yeah.
Like want to go do stuff.
I guess,
A
but I didn't.
mild-mannered lobster.
Yeah, I didn't get like a white-haired lobster. I didn't get a lot of like strong character from him though. Maybe that was just me. But the very cartoonish sentiments of the other ones. A lot of the comedy was kind of drawn from Gummy Bears too. So if you see the similarities in kind of the comedy style, that's where that's
Yeah.
from.
Bouncing here and there and everywhere.
Exactly. For a future podcast,
Dun, 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 beyond compare.
keep it going.
Okay, I'm done.
No, I was gonna
no,
say
I'm
keep-
done.
okay.
No, I'm done.
Okay.
But yeah, Broadway actually reminds me. Do you guys remember who's the big? Was it Tummy Gummy?
Tummy gummy.
Tummy
Yeah.
Gummy.
Yeah.
He's like the big, fat, kind of doofy. It might even be the same guy that voices him. I'm not sure, but
Oh snap! That'd be so crazy.
it might be.
I hope so.
So we've got Broadway in this one. He's kind of he's a little slow, but he's really sweet, and he loves food, so he's super overweight. And he's kind of
Nope.
awkward.
Oh.
Different guy.
Sorry, Dave. I was gonna drop another knowledge bomb on you
It's not
about
the same
another cartoon character who's sort of rotund and likes
Incoming
eating.
knowledge bomb. Yeah, go ahead.
You guys should get
And
that
take-
sound effect.
Get a
We
sound
really
effect
should.
box.
Yeah, knowledge bomb sound effects.
And takes the form of a starfish.
A starfish.
Wait, say that.
Did you not know this?
And his friend is
Oh, Patrick.
fun. That is the same voice actor.
Oh,
as,
so Bill
Broadway.
Fagerbaki.
Yeah, Bill Fagerbaki.
Fagerbaki. So
Fagerbaki.
Patrick and Broadway. That's interesting.
Yeah, he does both of them. That was actually immediately after hearing Broadway talk, I was like, that's the voice of Patrick Starr.
Oh,
That is
interesting.
It's unmistakable.
See, that's one I just never got into that much. So to me, that was like in my head, that was still Broadway.
Okay.
That was
You
Broadway.
guys are talking about SpongeBob SquarePants?
SpongeBob
Yeah, we
SquarePants.
just slipped right into that.
Never watched it.
Never
Good
watched
call,
it.
Jamal.
Never watched it.
On AMC Sunday nights. Good call, Jamal.
Good call, Jamal.
Yep.
Digital hand five. High five.
All
Hand
right.
five.
No, I'll take a hand five from you any day.
Okay, I'll give you a
Yeah,
hand
buddy.
All right, hand drive. Let's go.
Any other favorite
Next.
gargoyles out there? Anybody else have favorites?
I want to say my favorite was Bronx.
You like
Same.
Bronx? I knew you were gonna like Bronx. You always love the
'cause I
cutesy
like-
animal things.
I like dogs, so
And Bronx is
I
a straight
love-
up gargoyle dog.
Bronx is a gargoyle-like dog.
Agog.
A gog.
He's all
A
agog.
dog.
All agog.
Who is fantastic.
That's it. The end.
Yeah.
His vocal effects provided by Frank Welker, the one and only.
Yes.
Except for when he's actually barking.
Yes. And then they just got an actual gog come in.
Yeah.
Are we just gonna skip talking about Lexington because it's such a
No.
throwaway
Oh
character?
No. Let's get
I
it.
want to talk
Lexington.
Lexington.
The Donatello.
Yeah, he's my favorite, which that means everyone else hates him because he's actually like the curious, intellectually leaning, kind of pain in the ass gargoyle.
Yeah.
Poor little guy.
Curiosity killed the cat type character.
Yeah, exactly. He almost got blown up on a motorcycle. That was fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's Lexington.
So he's the smallest. He's,
Yeah, he's
green.
tiny.
We should mention all of these. Goliath is like a purple.
Teal.
That's a bold
Like a-
choice.
Light teal.
No, not teal.
No, not teal. I'd go purple. Lilac maybe.
I'd go purple.
Lavender
Same.
with like midnight
purple's
black
right, Jamal.
mullet hair. That's pretty sweet.
Yeah.
Mullet pear.
Mullet hair.
Oh,
hair.
mullet
Yeah.
hair.
I mean, it's kind of redundant. I probably should have just left it at mullet, but yeah.
So Hudson is sort of a desert color.
He's the color of the
He's-
desert.
he's like a brown.
Brown also would have been acceptable. That's good.
and he's got a glass eye or something,
It's
or he's like
pretty badass.
Yeah,
blind,
just a
blind in one
sweet
eye.
scar through his eye. Yeah,
That's
He's
sweet.
got gray hair,
Gray
or
hair.
white hair,
and a big old belly and a sword he likes to carry around with him.
Yeah. We have Brooklyn, who is red.
Did you think he was red?
He's kind of
Yeah.
like a
He's
crimson
like a
or like an
rust. He
oxblood.
looks rusted.
I thought he was period juice red.
He's no
Juice.
actually.
I like the juice part of that.
Yeah, period juice
Juice.
red.
You
Like after it's pasteurized.
Jamal, when this is all over, we're gonna have a come to Jesus about periods because
Good luck bringing your
larger
period to
conversation.
Jesus.
we're gonna table
Got
that.
enough to worry
We're
about.
putting that up on the shelf for later with the tampon.
This show
box.
is launching some epic conversations, I would just like
Oh
to
my
point
God.
out. And I expect nothing less out of episode 50.
So Brooklyn looks rather patinaed.
It's got a patina to him.
Lexington is a green.
Yeah, I would
Ye-
say teal. I would go with teal. for
I
me.
was going to say kind of
I
olive.
thought he was olive. Yeah,
Yeah, I'd say
I thought he
olive.
was Olive.
Man, Jamal.
I just want to note that
Jamal,
we are
we're-
bitching over the color palette of these Disney cartoons.
Which probably look
Which is
completely different
important.
depending on what we watched it on. Yeah.
Colors and names matter. Your name doesn't match your color. It makes sense.
Oh,
All right. What would you call Broadway then? Is he not teal?
Yeah, I thought he was like teal,
See?
okay.
but you guys are
We'll
saying
go
he's
teal.
purple.
No, that was Goliath. I
Yeah,
think
it was Goliath.
Oh, yeah,
That was
Goliath.
Yeah,
is
yeah.
purple. I
He's
thought you guys were
lilac.
saying Broadway.
Lilac.
No,
Goliath.
Broadway's
That's
a
what I
teal.
meant to say.
I think what we're
Okay.
all discussing here is that we are all colorblind. And
That's guys, everybody was just a different shade of gray for me. I don't know what you're talking about.
there you go.
I don't see color because I can't.
No, Dave.
No, don't
Dave.
Don't do
No,
that.
don't do that.
that.
Okay.
Dave,
You
you and I
can't
are going to
see
have a
color?
conversation
I
after
can't.
Jamal and I have a
Oh.
conversation
Okay.
about
Man, you're
seeing
missing out on
color.
some good prejudice.
Pride and Prejudice and Melanie.
Oh no.
And zombies.
You're missing out.
Got to bring him in.
Oh God! All right, so we have. Do we want to talk about Damona?
Let's talk about her briefly. We can just kind of mention her, but I would only talk about her in the context of the opening of the show, and then we can go right into the show themselves.
Okay.
So yeah, we are introduced to her. She's pretty much the only female gargoyle that we are introduced to, along with this pack of other to be named gargoyles. It's important to mention that in the past, in 994 AD, atop this castle, while they're defending, the gargoyles are defending the castle against these invading Vikings. There are many other gargoyles that are around at the time. You see them in kind of snippets in battles and things like that. You don't really get any conversations with them. You don't get any real screen time with them, but there are more than the half dozen or so hero gargoyles in this series. So that's kind of where we start. You guys want to just jump into the episodes now? We'll try to roll through these.
Let's get into it.
I mean, we can kind of give them a little bit of the plot, but I just want to kind of hit the points that really stuck out to you guys, whether for good or for ill. There were a couple moments, like Sean and I mentioned, that were a little wonky. I know Melanie has some talking points she wants to get through. I'm sure Jamal has opinions on a lot of these things too. So, what were kind of the strong points that jumped out at you guys that you think bears a little more talking about?
So I was a little confused. I don't remember the pilot episode from the show, so I don't remember that they came from Scotland. And I was like, why are we in Scotland?
Yeah.
Aren't gargoyles like a French made up, not like Gothic thing? What? And like Jamal said, they're like,
Stop the recording there. Loop that. What?
Loop it.
A French Gothic sort of thing.
What?
And then just meme
No, to
meme
your
Goliath's
point.
face right over that. Yeah.
And then none of the fucking gargoyles had Scottish accents.
Now, did Hudson have a slight kind of brogue to it, or was it just Ed Asner being a gratchy old guy?
I think it was Scratchy.
Okay,
Yeah.
fair enough.
Because I noticed that immediately. I was like, wait a minute. These gargoyles have been in Scotland. They would have picked this up. 'Cause
And,
they're
like,
full grown.
And by episode like 3 or 4, he goes to the gargoyles. I wish I wrote this line down, but it was like, "What are you guys talking about?" And I was like, "So now we're in Canada."
Yeah, he stopped over in Newfoundland on the way down to New York. They had to refuel.
So confused.
Yeah, a little confusing. But for the most part, Brooklyn definitely picks up kind of the Brooklyn accent. It's funny that they start to kind of pick up on the slang of the day, and they're confused by all these little anachronisms, which are in themselves funny to us now, because this is like 20 years later. One of the
Right.
main plot points is Xanatos, this crazy resourceful billionaire who can afford to fly, gargoyle statues and an entire castle, brick by brick, or sometimes just whole, and put it on top of his own skyscraper. So a very resourceful guy. He needs the gargoyles to retrieve 3 sets of data on diskettes.
Were they diskettes or were they like iOmega floppy drives?
They were basically, just floppy drives,
I thought they were floppy drives.
which I found delightful.
Or the iOmega zip disks.
Yeah, the zip disks.
The iOmega zip disks.
They had to be pretty sturdy because Hudson didn't know what it was, and he was basically just like snapping the thing in two. And as Jamal mentioned, their hands can just crush your scapula, so had to be pretty sturdy. But I love the fact that he was just like, this most important data in the world to me is on these 3 separate disks that I will spend untold billions of dollars to reawaken these mythical gargoyles in order to create an army to retrieve these discs. That plot point to me, the betrayal and all that other stuff aside, that stuff was great. But the whole actual, like the main cog in the wheel of this story, I was just like, what the fuck? What kind of plan is this? And that's where I was just like, as a kid, that would have been fine with me. Probably would have blew my mind. Would have thought it was really cool. As an adult, I was just like, that's kind of shoddy.
Yeah.
That's a little
actually,
shoddy.
Yeah, I'd say that for me was actually very confusing.
Yeah.
So
Well, we can walk through it. Yeah.
Well, Xanatos he knows Demona exists.
Right.
He knows that there is a real gargoyle that's out there.
Right. And she's eventually revealed, probably about halfway through this mini movie.
Right.
Yeah.
And the thing that's interesting is that he brings back these other gargoyles with the hope and expectation that he can control them. Now, he already has one gargoyle that is thinking along the same lines that he is.
Right.
So Demona she has sort of become, let's say, a little bit jaded with the passage of time.
She's drunk the Kool-Aid.
Yeah, she has had a couple of those Dixie cups full of Kool-Aid.
Mm-hmm. I said, keep talking, Xanatos.
Yeah.
I'm with you, boy.
She's on board with his terrible shenanigans. And I don't understand why they felt the need to then release like a half a dozen robot replicas of Goliath to fight them. That seemed like an unnecessary plot point to me.
Look, I'm even fine with that. I am less fine with, okay, here's the plan, basically. Like, okay, Xanatos knows Demona.
Break
Check.
it down.
Check. We've got that. She tells him there's these other gargoyles and there's a spell, and if you break it, but they basically owe you a favor. Okay, cool. I've got all these gargoyles. They're going to do whatever I need them to do. Cool. I'm worth untold billions of dollars, so much so that, once again, I can fly a castle halfway around the world to land on top of my, basically, much larger castle.
Castle Rich.
Castle Rich. He's Castle Rich in multiple time zones. So you've got that level of resources. You have enough money and manpower and pull to stage your own attack on your own compound, killing some of your own people, to force these naive, literally just born again creatures into thinking that they need to help you and help protect you in order to get them to steal discs so that you can then make robot gargoyles to then turn on your gargoyles that you just what the fuck is happening at this point? That's where it lost it for me. I loved all the betrayals, I loved all the mythology stuff, but that was such like a tautological, just spiraling in circles kind of goofy story that was just like, wait, what?
And who doesn't back up their data?
Seriously, guys.
Seriously.
Come on, Cyber
Seriously.
Bioptics, whatever the hell made up company that was.
The thing that lost it for me was a bunch of the things that weren't keeping in tune with 1994. I mean, let's look past the back then.
Such as, please list them.
There's
Yes.
other
Here we go.
things
Here we go.
like the metal/silicone body armor combo that was being made. Apparently, that was out in fashion.
Yeah, that was out in force. Yeah.
For those mercenaries.
Yeah.
There was like a very sophisticated like safe door clip charge that they just snuck under the thing and like perfectly blew up the lock so they could get in. I was like,
Yeah.
that's a very specific.
Yes. It's custom made for this door. Yeah.
Yeah. And then also that was very unrealistic to 94 was all of the mercs who were white guys had like amazing agility.
I pointed that out. I might have written like an entire paragraph on that.
They were
Not
being
so
tossed
much
around.
that they were white and agile, but the fact that they I missed that because I don't see color, remember? But
Oh God,
Oh,
Dave.
Dave.
I tried. But actually, the fact that they were like henchmen who were capable.
Yeah.
and not completely just useless. They were
Yeah.
putting up a
Great.
really good fight,
Yeah.
and that kind of stood out to me too. And it
It's
makes
almost
sense
like-
later on. Yeah, good.
It's almost like they were like a special unit that Xanatos trained with the help of the female gargoyle to fight other gargoyles.
I like where your
'cause-
head's at. I like that.
Because the silicone and the armor plating was on the shoulders, so it's like where you get
It's
grabbed.
where he
Yeah,
would.
where you get your scapula broke.
So, like, he's just tossing them, and they're landing on their feet. And I
Yeah,
remember
just
watching
rolling,
this. I was
yep.
like, "What is this? These guys aren't like pushovers that like the Foot Clan. Like they're not
Right?
just getting plowed through by the gargoyles." And then there was another thing. Was it the third episode when they're in the park?
When the
In Central Park, yeah.
The
was-
woman chasing Goliath and the detective, the woman mercenary.
Yeah,
She
you can tell
fires-
she's a woman because she's got a blonde ponytail, just sticking out of her helmet.
She's the only one out of
Yeah.
the whole
The
group
only
with
one.
a long blonde
And,
ponytail.
and lipstick on because
And
girls
lipstick,
gotta
yeah.
look good when
Yeah.
she's kicking
Exactly.
butt. Jesus.
She fires at Goliath and the detective 29 times from
Yeah.
the hand without reloading.
Yeah, and then misses every shot too.
Misses every
Every
shot. I
shot.
was like, okay, maybe a little less time on the hand-to-hand combat, a
Right.
little more in the firing range.
Dude, to the point that her commander comes over and just like lifts her arm and is like, no, we don't want to kill him. Like she
Yeah, yeah.
unloaded like 3 clips on these
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah, not to mention that even with an extended clip, you
Yeah,
can't
you
carry
can't
that many
carry
bullets.
29
29
shots.
bullets in a handgun. I don't care what technology you have. It's a handgun.
I do love though, speaking of this one blonde kind of like stormtrooper, at one point I think it was Hudson. Didn't Hudson, when they're fighting up on top of the roof, he saw her like her blonde hair and he's like, "Are you a Viking?" And then she just electrocutes him.
Yes.
I love that.
That was pretty spectacular.
What a great scene.
So besides all of these futuristic Tron henchmen that
Yeah.
come out, then we see these cars that are like these 70s cruisers that have like full on hand cell phones or whatever.
Yes,
car
thank you. The
phones.
corded car phone. Yes.
And once I saw that, I was like, okay, so we're in like Gotham, confusing time period.
The television show Gotham.
The television show
Yeah,
Gotham,
where it all
which
just melts
also,
together, yeah.
Also happens to fit nicely with the New York theme, but
Yeah.
very confusing.
Look, if on season 2 of Gotham, Goliath and his gargoyles just come and just decimate everybody that works for the GCPD, totally fine with that.
I'd be cool with it too.
Just saying.
Well, if
I'm
they,
on
well,
board.
you know what? If Gotham has an episode with somebody called the Balloon Man, I'm sure that they'll bring a gargoyle in season 2.
God.
I'd like to think that Goliath was just flying along when the balloon man went floating by and he just shredded those balloons just for the hell of it.
I want to take 2 seconds, very quick, just for like a Sean corner,
Okay.
and say the amount of shade that I just threw at the television show Gotham isn't even half as much fucking shade it was thrown on that poor guy Brendan in an alley.
Thank you so much. We need to talk about the yuppies.
That scene
when
crippled
when
me.
the car broke down?
Yeah.
Oh my
I was
god.
about to talk about
That
that.
is so
Okay.
good.
She-
Let's get into this. Let's get into this bizarre kind of
when
like
the
side
car-
moment. Yeah.
Yeah. When the car breaks down, she turns and looks to him and says, "Well, what do you expect? You only paid 40 grand for it." This is 1994.
Right? That's some
All
baller
right?
money.
A 40 grand car is pretty nice. All right. So, real recognize real here. I mean, you're in a 40 grand car, young lady. And she's like giving him shit.
Do you remember his response though?
What do you say?
He-
Because she's like, man, she is just like nagging and nagging and nagging him, and he's like, give it a rest, Margot.
Look at here.
Because now
Look
we're in
at
the
here.
30s.
And then the mugging happens, which is finally true to form in the 90s in New York.
Right?
Yeah.
They get mugged by 3 separate people who look like they're from 3 different gangs.
Yeah, 3 different
Who
street
hang
gangs.
out together.
They weren't even from
You think
3
this is
street
the
gangs.
Warriors, Jamal?
They were from 3 separate video game versions of side-scrolling brawlers. Is basically what they were. You had like a Double Dragon guy, a Streets of Rage guy,
Thank you.
and then a random Blades of Glory guy came in. I don't know why, but
River City Ransom.
River City Ransom came in. But so those 2 characters, it's Margot Yale and Brendan Quarters. It's a yuppie couple that often run into the gargoyles. They cross paths like throughout multiple episodes. So it's kind of a running gag for this kind of stuff. And I thought it was hilarious. It reminded me of oh my god, Beyond Belief. Do you guys listen to Thrilling Adventure Hour?
Yes.
Yes.
You know Beyond Belief,
Yes.
Sadie and I can't think of
Is it Frank Doyle?
Frank and Sadie Doyle,
Yeah,
the
Frank
upper
and
crusts that they solve kind of these supernatural mysteries. Anyway, it reminded me of those two. It might as well have been, Paul F. Tompkins.
Minus the incessant nagging.
Yeah, that's true. She doesn't do enough of that. Yeah.
No, they.
Plus a lot more mugging. Yeah.
Yeah.
More mugging.
That scene for me, when the man gets out and he's like, well, I'm gonna try to fix it, and then she goes, you call whatever serviceman or like electrician when you need to plug in the coffee machine. My response would have been, you know what, I'm fucking done.
Just leave her to the muggers.
No, I mean, because I wouldn't have known that. I would not have known that the mugging was imminent.
Right.
But in that moment, if somebody had ever said, I want to say this isn't just a person. This isn't a male or a female. This isn't bias in terms of sex at all. But if somebody ever treats you like that, you need to just walk away from that person and just forget them from your life.
Leave them to the muggers.
Out of your $40,000 car.
With a car
and
phone, man. That was pretty sweet.
Yeah, and I was sure that when she locks the doors of the car, when she's like, "Oh, this mugging is going down. My boyfriend's going to die," that she was going to jump into the passenger seat and just drive away. Yeah. I'd be like, "That bitch would."
I love that she locked him out of the car to begin with, though. That was bad enough.
It's almost like she's like, "No, you have to go through the trial."
Yep.
She locks the door. You will earn your way back into your own car.
You will earn your way back into this $40,000 car
that you bought with your hard-earned money.
Now take on those youths.
My modern day car just didn't even cost that much in 2008 as that car does.
I will never ever buy a car that has a ticket price that is that high. That is preposterous.
I will only buy a $40,000 car when the minimum wage is $15 an hour. It's the only time.
Keep dreaming, Dave.
I want to say
I'm going to move to Seattle.
When you move to Seattle. The fun thing about this is that here I am talking about earlier in the show that I want to have the amount of money to be able to move a fucking castle.
Right.
And in my life, I'm just like, no way in hell am I ever going to spend $40,000 on a car. You're out of your mind.
Well, listen, Xanatos did not just going around spending $40,000 on cars. He's been saving up to move this fucking castle.
He's been
very parsimonious with
every penny.
He's been
driving
that Kia Sorrento
right. A Hyundai Accent for 20 years. I feel like his entire skyscraper is just full of gold. Like, you know how Scrooge McDuck has that gold pool full of gold coin? I feel like that is Xanatos' entire skyscraper. Just packed full of gold. There's no offices, there's no people. It's just solid gold, top to bottom. Because that guy has got some money.
So I wanna note about the Xanatos character.
Please.
Dave, you mentioned that he is an amalgamate of two other characters. Do you remember what you had messaged me with earlier?
I do. I want to change that slightly. I'll say what I said.
Revisions.
Yeah, some revision notes because of how this ended up. Xanatos is an interesting... Oh, God. Xanatos... Wouldn't be the first time. Xanatos is an interesting character throughout the series because his allegiances do swing back and forth to different groups over time. And usually it's kind of like, he's almost like Malcolm Merlyn in Arrow. He's always looking out for himself, but he is occasionally pretending to be allied with one group or another. So that's probably the closest...
As a big Arrow fan, that's 100% accurate.
Yes, so that's basically him. If you guys haven't seen the show before, but you have watched Arrow, this guy is basically Malcolm Merlyn. But I said to Sean, I was like, he's basically like Tony Stark and Indiana Jones, because he's like this ridiculously wealthy, technocratic billionaire who also has an interest in mythology and archaeology. Now, granted, it was a means to his ends, but he still had that interest. So it's kind of an interesting character they've crafted in David Xanatos.
I like that. That's cool.
Yeah.
So who was the revision? What's the revision that
the
you
revision
have,
would be Malcolm Merlyn, because definitely that villainous side of him that's not really revealed in this opener until pretty much 4th, 5th episode. So most of the way through it, he's revealed to have this harebrained scheme, which makes zero sense. But hey, whatever. It worked for the cartoon. It was totally fine. Voiced by Jonathan Frakes, by the way, Star Trek fame.
I knew he was going to be a villain as soon as I saw him. Any white guy who's throwing that kind of money, save something, has got something up his sleeve.
And his name starts with an X. Never good.
Yeah.
Rarely good.
Combine that with Sean's theory, and boom, you have a bad guy's born.
Yeah.
I'm going to throw out Xerxes and Zordon.
Oh, those are good.
So those are two. Zordon's good, though, unfortunately. So I got Zordon and Zed for Power Rangers fans out there.
Oh, wow.
Battle of the Z's.
Wow,
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah, bringing it back.
Oh, and Zool.
Oh, Zool.
Ooh, good Ghostbusters
That is a good
reference.
one.
Thanks.
Oh, can I mention something?
Of course.
When in the third episode, when when the detective is about to go show Goliath around New York,
Yeah.
and he's like, "Where do you want to go
Just give him
see?"
a tour,
And he says, "I want to see the dangers that threaten me and my kind," while he's holding the girl.
Right.
And I so wanted him. I wanted the girl to say, "Oh no, I'm not going to take you to Harlem."
Oh, no. They're going to go see a show at the Apollo.
I want to see the dangers that threaten me and my kind. Oh, we're not going to Harlem. I'll show you the rest of New York. That's what I so wanted her to say. But that's if I was writing the show.
I do like picturing them just hovering over the
Instead,
city
go
until
to-
they see that
go to
mugging.
Lower
though.
East Side.
Yeah, then they go to Lower East
Yeah.
Side in the park at night. And then she comments saying, "It's usually not safe to be out here at night."
Doesn't she say something weird? Like there's just mothers singing to their babies, and it's just like a bunch of normal people just walking around.
What, in the park?
No,
Yeah,
she's
didn't she
talking
say
about
something
that,
like that?
in relation to humans.
Oh, just in this day and
being,
age.
being pretty okay things.
Okay, I gotcha. And then they get attacked by multiple human beings. Yeah.
And then they get attacked.
Which brings up another thing. That the ending of that episode proves what I believe all along. If you run into white people in the park at night, it's more dangerous.
I would 100% agree with that.
Yeah.
What are we doing out there? We got no business
what are
being
you
out
doing
there.
out there?
No
Exactly.
business. Up to no
Exactly.
good. I do like, bringing it back to the show for a second, I do like that she spent pretty much the entire day of her day job as a New York police detective
Yeah.
protecting a statue in the park like a crazy
She-
person.
Yep.
She is irresponsible.
Oh my god, countless people died. Accidents all over the city, but she's protecting a statue in the park. No, I loved it though. I loved it. I mean, in all seriousness, for the show itself, it's a very... She has to show her devotion. She has to earn his trust because it's obviously been shattered by, you know, the Vikings and by now Xanatos and now by his own kind, which we'll get to. So she really has to earn his trust, and I think that was a pretty cool way to show it, even if she shirked all her daily responsibilities. So, do you guys, we're getting a little short on time. Do you have anything else major from this before we get to the final moments of the show?
I have something.
Yeah.
Melanie, Jamal.
Nah, I'm still curious about what Wind Up Street Pizza is, but
Was that a shop?
I have one. It's very quick.
there.
Wait, was that a shop? I missed that.
No,
No.
it was in the first episode.
It was actually in the first and in the second episode because weirdly they
Oh,
like
that cut.
revisit the
Yeah,
same
yeah.
moment
Yeah.
where shit's fallen from the sky
Right.
and Maz is on the scene and there are these dudes talking and like there's this moment, it happened twice, and each time the only word I heard clearly was pizza, and then she touches claw marks. So the second time it happened, I wrote it down what I heard, which was Wind Up Street Pizza.
Oh, I gotcha.
It was in reference to the idea of people falling and hitting the street,
Or
like,
being on the street
or-
when something flattens you, and I don't want to wind up street pizza. I thought it was literally the name of a pizza shop called Wind Up Street Pizza.
Me too.
And I was like, I want to go to Wind Up Street and have some pizza because that sounds
guys,
great.
Commas are so important.
They
They
are
are.
so
They are
important.
very important. Punctuation. The powers of punctuation. Wind Up
Oh,
Street
man.
Pizza.
That was my
One
moment.
other thing I had was
Yeah.
in the 5th episode, at the end, when Broadway is about to turn back to stone, there's a Chinese food quip. And
Yes.
It says, "What'd you eat?" He's like, "I had Chinese food and it was good, but an hour later I was hungry again." Shots fired.
I
Chinese
mean,
food.
just like such a Chinese food joke at the end of this.
Yeah, shots fired.
He's like, hey, he might as well have just like looked through the screen and be like, hey kids, you get it? I'm a fat guy and I love
you
eating
get
food.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was pretty good though.
I think
I like their comedy. I did like their comedy. It was real
Yeah.
goofy and silly at times, but it lightened up the show because, like Jamal said, that intro was terrifying. So
Yeah,
it lightens up the show for the kids. Yeah. Sean,
So,
did you have something?
My quick note or my quick thought was
Mm-hmm.
is that the caveat that gets placed on the caveat of this magic spell
Mm-hmm.
that places them.
By a Magus, who we didn't even talk about, but
Yeah, right.
By Orlando Bloom.
by Orlando Bloom as a Magus. Yeah.
Legolas in just in this. So the caveat for this magic spell was that they will remain a stone until the castle rises above the clouds.
As Jamal mentioned, yep.
And I know that that's there as a plot device to then flash forward to 1994 when they're able to achieve that feat. But what other kind of weird, crappy caveats did they put on magic spells back then? Like, who was not thinking this through enough to the point where they were just like, oh, yeah, you're going to turn into a frog, but like until you touch water.
Yeah, when the desert turns black.
Yeah, right.
When the desert sands become black, you'll come back.
I mean, we'll never know because that last page of the Book of Spells was burned out by that douchey Viking guy. Burnt up.
You burnt.
You burnt.
Yeah, burnt.
But that's interesting because they will go into that, the spell mythology and the Book of Spells and all kinds of crazy time travel stuff. This series gets nuts. This is a fun start, and I think it did a really good job of showing what the series could be. But it gets crazy as the seasons go on, so I would definitely say go back and revisit it. I've got 2 quick points. One, I like seeing henchmen with actual ability, and I also like, as a counterpoint to that, seeing heroes with vulnerability. We rarely get to see a show where the protagonists are actually have an Achilles heel or actually can be hurt by anything. Usually there's just laser blasts just bouncing off of them, no big deal. These guys, not only do they have a built-in vulnerability during the day because they're turned to stone and they can be destroyed, as we see, they also, just because they have these massive wings doesn't mean they can fly anywhere. They can only glide places. So if they're trapped on the ground, unless you're Bronx, you're in trouble. So they have multiple vulnerabilities to the point that they call them out, saying like, if it bleeds, you can kill it, kind of thing. And then my last point, I wanted to get in a quick discussion with you guys, the final moments of this 5-episode epic opener. It basically is revealed that Demona is in league with Xanatos. Xanatos betrays the Gargoyles. Demona also betrays the Gargoyles for a second time because she was actually the one that came up with the plan to try to get the Gargoyles out of the castle back in 994, and that all went to pot. So she's actually more or less responsible for the slaughter of the rest of their race, pretty much. So you've got Xanatos and Demona betraying them. There's a fight that breaks out. Demona is almost about to kill Goliath, but Elisa intervenes. All 3 of them kind of go over the edge of the huge skyscraper castle once again. So Goliath now has to make a choice to save Elisa or to save his kin, his quote-unquote angel of the night, Demona, who just betrayed him. I thought that was a great moment, regardless of how it all kind of worked out. That was a great moment of decision and choice of, do I save this human who has shown me nothing but kindness, or do I save my own kin who is responsible for the death of pretty much the rest of my race? Do you guys have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it was, it is a powerful moment for him to make that decision. I don't know. I was not surprised when he made the decision that he did.
Right.
No, you can't be surprised because Demona is at first going to kill them,
right,
all of them, who are the last remaining ones of her kind.
As far as she knows, yeah.
She's spouting all of this crap about, like, all of the humans must be killed, except for Xanadu. I mean, Xantos.
It's potato.
Totally fine. It's just, so to me it was a no-brainer.
Like, for me, from like a practical standpoint, I'd have just been like, oh, well, this chick has wings, she'll probably be fine, and this chick is going to wind up street pizza if
Dave, if he was able to fly instead of just glide, he probably could have saved both.
Oh my god.
Yeah, he could have Supermaned him.
Which is another point that was interesting, that they continue to assert that they can only glide on gusts of wind.
Yeah,
these
drafts,
gargoyles cannot fly themselves. But then there are moments where their wings
Brooklyn
flap.
Brooklyn's like a giant bat coming through the city. Yeah,
Goliath does it as well.
Does he do it too?
Fly, and I don't know what to believe.
I like to think that they're always descending, though. So even if they flap and they get a little rise, they're still descending. They can't like take off from the ground and fly straight up like a bird or anything like that.
So Wikipedia tells us that I think what they do is similar to bats and perhaps like sugar gliders among other animals, which is called gliding flight, is because they're so heavy that they don't. Were you doing a stick?
I was doing a knowledge bomb.
Knowledge bomb. Yeah, I'm all good.
No, oh no, what just
Thanks.
Just got knowledge bombed.
So they can't thrust themselves up into the air. Is basically what the difference
Right.
is.
Yeah, they can't
So,
take
like,
off, right.
If they're already in the air, they can kind of like go up and down, but they can't like propel themselves off the ground into the sky.
Okay.
Right, exactly. Jamal, did you have any final thoughts on that kind of closing scene there?
I thought it was great that he jumped out and saved his new piece, and let his old habits die.
She has a name, Jamal.
Man, I wish that was the tagline of that episode. Old habits die hard.
That'd be great.
Get a piece of that new.
Yeah, he went and jumped over the ledge and saved Mom Jeans, and then brought her back.
I want to rewatch this show with Jamal's subtitles throughout the entire thing.
Mom jeans.
I think my favorite part was just the idea of, so there's that moment where Demona brings up shit that they have between Demona and Goliath
Yeah.
from 1,000 years ago.
Like a literal 1,000 years ago. Yeah.
And I'm gonna be honest, guys, if you think that women will ever stop bringing up shit from your past, she waited a fucking millennia. Like,
Yeah.
It only got worse.
Stone.
yeah, just guys, it never gets easier.
Goliath is probably just like the fucking curse. I wish I would have just stayed stone.
We
Fuck
will
you,
find your
Xanatos.
We'll find your shit and we'll dig it up.
God.
And then when she brought it up, he's like, "I'm gonna go talk to my friend." Well, and she's like, "Who's your friend?"
Yep. Yeah, immediately. I love that. I love that.
You've been alive for 2 minutes. Who's your friend?
Who's your friend? You don't know nobody. Who do you
I
know?
made a friend already. I met somebody.
Right?
I'm going.
Who'd you meet?
Don't worry about it. Well, whatever.
See, now, Sean, could you imagine if he had tried to save Demona and Angela and then was holding on to both of them like by their wrists, trying to fly them back? No. Hell no. That would not have ended well.
Who's Angela?
Who's Angela?
Oh, I'm sorry. There is an Angela Gargoyle.
She has a name and it's Alyssa.
There is an Angela.
There's an Angela.
Yeah, it's not really a spoiler, but there are more gargoyles in this universe, and Angela is one of them. She may or may not be related to Goliath, so that was a bit of a spoiler.
Oh wow.
Sorry there, kids. Come back and watch it again. All 78 episodes.
Oh boy.
Yeah. Yep.
So
Anything
should
else
we
from this one? We can do a round of recommendations, I think.
Yeah, I was gonna say we should do recommendations.
All right, Sean, start it up.
Do Jamal.
Or Jamal can start it up.
I will say, worth watching. Really is worth watching, especially for the theme of this cartoon.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a good one, especially to revisit if you're older, because then you can probably understand it better. So I definitely say I might go watch more episodes of it.
Heck yeah. Melanie?
Melanie.
2 thumbs way up.
Nice.
2 thumbs way up.
Excellent.
I would definitely recommend this myself.
Yeah,
Danny?
I cannot speak highly enough for this one. Even rarely is a show that we loved in our childhood actually hold up when we revisit it 20 years later.
Yeah.
This one surprisingly does. There are, like we said, some weird kind of moments and a lot of anachronistic stuff, but it's really, really good. And I'd love to see it again I'd love to see it rebooted. I don't know why it hasn't been, but until that day comes, at least you've got 78 episodes to watch. So yeah, there it is. Disney's Gargoyles.
I think the entertaining thing that'll happen is that it will get rebooted, and we're all gonna message each other simultaneously and just go, "Oh, come on!"
Michael Bay's Gargoyles.
I'm not paying to go see it.
No, hell no. I have no idea who I would actually want in charge of this franchise. Just Keith David.
John Woo directs Gargoyles.
John Woo's Gargoyles. There's so many doves. Why are there all these fucking doves up here?
Do you think there'll be a scene in the Michael Bay Gargoyles where they're all beatboxing in the elevator?
Oh God, probably.
Look, man, the fact that that movie did well and it has a sequel coming tells me that
No, it
Gargoyles
doesn't.
can be done.
I did not mean to cut you off, but oh my
No,
God.
I know. It's a
Yeah.
disturbing amount of news.
Yeah.
The one shining moment in that, Stephen Amell will be playing Casey Jones in the sequel.
I will admit something.
I don't
Yes.
care.
Guilty pleasure. I like the new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles just because I got to see the turtles again.
Just because you got to see him. I feel like that's how most people feel. You get to see him.
I mean, I'm not going to buy the DVD, but
That's why I work for an entertainment website where they give them to me for free.
well, there you go.
Yep. So if you want to borrow it sometime. Sean,
No.
actually, Sean, did I give you the? Did I?
I feel sick inside, Jamal.
Sip on your haterade.
Oh, man.
I will, because
Oof.
TMNT power. All right, now that we're done with recommendations, let's do a round of plugs. I feel like you guys are some pretty interesting people that may or may not be up to some stuff in the next couple of weeks. So let's go around again. Jamal, what do you have coming up next few weeks?
I have a whole lot of nothing.
Really?
Coming
Surprising.
Up. I don't have the thing I want to plug is happening tomorrow.
Oh.
So, yeah, I have a show tomorrow. So
retroactively go back in time.
And go to
and go see Jamal's show.
Yeah.
But for future shows, where can people find out what your schedule is and where they can catch you out and about?
Oh my God, Jamal Newman on Facebook or Comic Relief 24/7 on Twitter.
Can you spell that for me, please?
CMICRELEAF 24/7 at twitter.com.
At twitter.com?
At twitter.com.
I love that. I love your Twitter email. At twitter.com.
Oh boy.
Where can we find you on Instagram?
Well, I've got a couple of names.
Ooh.
So
Wow.
I finally changed my name to that is Hello Newman. So the O is a 0.
Very well done.
Hello Newman, no space. Instagram. You'll see
Good.
a lot of inappropriate penis pictures.
Get on it, ladies.
They're not mine.
you go.
They're sculptures, Greek sculptures.
Sculptures of Greeks.
Yeah. So you're up, Mel.
Follow that.
Follow that one.
I can't. I don't know how to follow that up. So I hang out with a cool group of artists here in DC. They're called Dog and Pony DC. It's an interactive theater company. And we've got a show coming up that we are doing a workshop production of at the Cincinnati Fringe Festival for any of the lovely Saturday morning cartoon listeners who are up in Cincinnati. To get weird with the good people over there. So that's going to be at the end of the month, the 29th through the 31st. And then we'll be back here in DC for the whole month of July on the playground, which will be awesome. Doing the show. The show's called Squares, and that's just the whole month of July for the Capitol Fringe Festival. You can look up more about Dog and Pony at dogandponydc.com. It's pretty easy.
Excellent. That sounds awesome. We will have all those up on our show notes too, so listeners, you can head on over to our page and check them out. Melanie, where can the folks find you on social media in the meantime?
I am at Melanie Gwynn on the Twitters, and the same thing, but add an underscore between my first and middle name. Oh, spoiler, Gwynn is my middle name.
Spoiler.
On Instagram.
Can you spell that out for the folks?
GWYNNE. It's Welsh.
It's Welsh.
Ding.
I like it. Sean, what do you got going on, buddy? Did
Uh,
I catch you off guard?
No, you did not. I was looking at a lot of the stuff that I have going on. I'm going to be doing a series of shows for Washington Improv Theater during the month of June. It'll be June 6th, 13th, 20th, and 27th. I believe all the shows are at 7:30, and it is a road show, which means that we will be at the DC Arts Center in Adams Morgan, also known as DCAC. And yeah, I'll post more information. I'll give more information to Dave to post where you could find those shows.
Excellent.
So yeah, that'll be a lot of fun.
And where can the folks find you on social media?
At hello Sean Paul L. I'm kidding. It's
At twitter.com.
Oh, Sean. What a kidder.
You can find me at Sean Paul Ellis on Twitter and Instagram.
Awesome. And if you want to follow along with me, you can do so on Twitter at Dr. ClawMD. That's DrClawMD. You can also check me out over at Collider.com. I am still reviewing some of these superhero shows that are hanging in there. We're about to probably start a new crop in the summer, but for the moment, I'll be covering the finale of Flash this coming week. Actually, by the time you're hearing this, it's probably done, so I hope you enjoyed it. But I'll also be covering Game of Thrones while that's going on this season too. But head on over to Collider.com, check out a whole bunch of stuff we've got over there. We're going to be having Comic-Con coverage coming up and a whole bunch of movie news coming up, so just check it out. It's always a good time. Speaking of always a good time, here we are at Saturday Morning Cartoons. You can find out more about us, SaturdayMorningCartoons.com. Remember, that's morning with a U. You can follow us along on Twitter at MorningTunes. Check out Sean's handiwork on our Tumblr page, SaturdayMorningCartoons.tumblr.com. Please, please, please feel free to send us suggestions, ideas, just any random comments. If you have any Greek sculpted dick things out there you want to share with Jamal, send us an email, SaturdayMorningCartoons@gmail.com. Remember to listen to the podcast each and every week on Stitcher and iTunes. It would help if you guys could subscribe, but then also to do the rate and review. Sean and I have been talking about that lately. We're trying to encourage people to, if you like the show, rate us and review us. Let us know how we're doing. It kind of gives us an idea of where the show is going and how many people we're reaching out there to. So if you have a few seconds, please kindly do that. I think that's about it for us tonight. So thank you very much for listening to the 50th episode. Sean, buddy, on the spot, do you know what we're going to be listening to for next week, or are we going to leave the listeners wondering?
I actually, I think 51st episode is going to be. I think we're gonna leave people with a cliffhanger.
Okay, we're gonna figure that one out, and we're gonna tease you a little bit and let this one soak in. Here's what you should do for the next week or so: just go back and listen to all 50 of the previous episodes. It's gonna be real good. Just do it for 2 straight days. Just don't sleep. It's gonna be great, and you'll finish it by the anti-drug PSA. So that's gonna be a real good one for you to finish your bender.
I'm gonna go do this.
Yeah, definitely go do it.
I've already done it, so.
Nice. See?
Ooh, overachiever.
I'm a super
I want
fan.
to be like Mel. It's Welsh. That's our new tagline. All right, guys, this has been Saturday Morning Cartoons. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next time. Drop of a
please
towel
go-
sometimes.
please go ahead.
No, the moment's passed. I feel like you like Garurumon. Is that correct?
The who?
Garurumon.
No, I don't think so.
You're not a Garurumon?
No, I'll be honest with you. I this is a total sidebar, but I did watch the first episode of Digimon about 5 months ago, and I had no idea. I did not remember how heavy-handed the message is
Oh, yeah.
Ooh.
in that first episode about pollution.
Dude, if you think you hear a lot about global warming these days, just take a trip back to Digimon and, man. But for another day.
Oh my gosh. To get rid of this segue, can you give us a little bit more about the history of the show, Dave?
I would be happy to. So, Gargoyles, American animated series produced by Walt Disney Television Animation and Buena Vista Television. Originally aired from October of 1994 to February of 1997 for a total of 78 half-hour episodes, 3 seasons. The first season, I believe, was only about 12 episodes, and that includes this first pretty epic 5-episode introductory pilot that we all watched for this podcast, and they eventually
that was ambitious.
I mean, huge. It's almost half your season. That's your first season, and the first half of it is the introduction to the rest of the show. But it was great. I mean, we'll talk about it, obviously, during the course of the show, but they eventually kind of packaged it together as a movie, and that was called Awakening. I think they changed it the movie title was actually Gargoyles Heroes Reborn or something to that effect. But, yeah, did pretty well, enough to get 2 more seasons out of it, which fans will differ what's in canon, what they think of is really the core of the show, whether it ended in season 2 or whether they include season 3 as part of it. But besides
those
the point,
gargoyle forums are brutal.
they are brutal, man. You gotta
Be careful if you're going to go.
you gotta have a thick skin in there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, do you know the detail behind season 3 of Gargoyle?
I didn't want to get too much into it, but Sean, if you have a
Well,
quick,
because it was Gargoyle Goliath, correct?
yeah, it was Gargoyles: The Goliath Chronicles. Yeah,
Yeah, it was Gargoyles Tokyo Drift.
Tokyo Drift.
So
Yeah.
it kind of goes it goes a little bit of a different path.
Oddly
for that
enough,
film.
directed by James Wan. Pretty strange out of the gates there, but yeah. Actually, I would love to have him actually direct this film, but besides the point. This one's kind of interesting because by the time I got to season 3, it was muddled with a bunch of new writers and directors and creators. But honestly, the series overall, it doesn't really have a true creator credit. A fellow by the name of Greg Weisman, who was an English teacher who was working at Disney, and he kind of pitched some of the ideas, but other people kind of pitched them too. It seemed like one of these things that was a real collaborative effort, but nobody really put the final stamp on it. Fans, as far as I can tell, really look to him as sort of the central point to getting the show off the ground. I did not mean to do that, but there it is. There's my first pun of the night. Yeah, sorry guys, it's gonna be one of those nights.
Oh no, I missed it.
No, it's fine. Guess what? You can listen to this episode when it goes live and hear it over and over again.
And he said that he was looking forward to getting it off the ground.
Yeah.
I thought he was going to make a rock bottom joke, but
No, not yet. We'll save it.
I mean, that's probably number 2.
I'll put that back.
Or
in
that
my-
right there was number
That
2.
way there was. We got a counter.
I'm a seasoned vet, so I let all these just die.
Yeah. He knows better than to chime in. He just lets us struggle to death out here. Smart man, smart man. So we've got Greg Weisman as the sort of creator behind the series, but then for the first season, almost all the episodes, 12 out of 13 episodes, are written by a husband and wife team by the name of Michael and Bryn Chandler Reeves. And I think that lends itself to the really cohesive narrative of this first season, especially with that 5 episode opener that we saw. So a lot of things kind of came together to make this first season really strong and then grow it over the next season. But we won't get too much into the other seasons because we just watched that first 5 episode parter. Now to tell you what the show is actually about, I'm going to turn it back over to Sean.
Thank you, Dave.
Sure.
So, the series follows a species of nocturnal creatures known as gargoyles that turn to stone during the day. It focuses mainly on the clan leader named Goliath. So, it starts out in the first episode with a flashback to the year 994. This clan of gargoyles, they live in a castle in medieval Scotland alongside of humans, until many of them are killed by a betrayal, and the remainder are magically frozen in stone until the castle, quote, rises above the clouds. A millennium later, in 1994, billionaire David Xanatos.
So good.
Do you want to know how I know he was going to be the villain?
How? How'd you figure that out?
His name started with an X.
There it is.
I feel like the lower you get, on in the alphabet, numerically or alphabetically, the more probability. If you have an X,
That run different sites that I pay money to.
I got one from Tumblr the other day saying "Happy 1 year," and
That's
that was
one
very
I got.
exciting.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and a bunch of sex bots that have nothing to do with this podcast, but they just check in on me every once in a while.
That's cute.
Yeah,
Make sure the credit card still works.
yeah, exactly.
Those reoccurring payments just come and rolling in.
It's like, we noticed a low balance the other day, buddy. Just checking to make sure you're still buying them coins. Anyway,
Move some funds around.
Bitcoins.
Jokes on them. Dave's really just a bot himself.
that's true. That's true. Bots on bots.
We waited 50 episodes to be able to reveal that little fun fact.
Which is actually timely because I don't want to give anything away, but there might be some sort of robotic spoiler in this episode.
Yeah, it was a good lead-in.
Yeah, I think it was pretty good. So obviously we're talking sex bots and gargoyles tonight. That'll be
Solid.
That'll be the show.
A solid segue.
Thank you so much, Jamal. I've been working on it.
We are, in fact, talking Disney's Gargoyles this evening.
Yeah, and honestly, I've been excited about this one for a while, but we wanted to wait for like a milestone episode because it feels bigger than it is. Probably, doing some of the research, it seems like a lot of the fandoms and things that are out there for there were conventions for a number of years, but that's been defunct for 5 or 6 years now. There were comic books and video games and a lot of paraphernalia that was out there, but in the last few years. There hasn't really been anything. So in my mind, this was huge because I'm still stuck in like mid-90s. But apparently these days, nobody gives a shit. So I'm hoping that the listeners out there remember this fondly. I was thrilled to find that, upon revisiting this series, every bit as good as I remembered. There's a few things that we'll definitely talk about in the show that are a little wonky, but really solid. Easily the best thing we've watched on this show so far.
Yeah.
What do you think,
I will say, I feel very similar, Dave, that I enjoyed this series, and I think that's the consensus in the room right now.
Yeah,
is that we enjoyed this series. I will say that there are some points of interest that are in the show that kind of continued to make me raise an eyebrow. Yeah, and so I guess that's the nicest way to say there were some moments that were a little bit wonky.
Oh yeah, it's not perfect by any means, but
yeah,
relative to all the other 49 things we've covered, yeah.
Oh man.
What's so funny for me is I distinctly remember this being somehow connected to the Hunchback of Notre Dame movie because of the 3 comedic gargoyles that are in that.
Right.
But then, upon looking up the timeline of that, because I effing loved that movie as a kid, and I love this TV series, but they came out like in 96, and this show went until 97.
Right.
But I was definitely watching the show when it was on television, so I don't know.
Well,
what Baby Mel convinced herself of.
Let me ask you this though: did you read Disney Adventures back in the day?
Yes.
No,
Remember that magazine?
Oh my gosh.
Okay, because I was reading into the mythology a little bit for the show, both the in canon stuff and the behind the scenes stuff, and all the marketing that came out with obviously a Disney property, weirdly tied in with Marvel at the same time too, we'll get into that later. But Mel, there actually was a Hunchback of Notre Dame tie-in for the Disney movie when that came out. There was a
Bam!
story from Disney Adventures called The Experts, and I don't have much more on it than that, but it was a tie-in, so it was like a marketing tie-in for that movie. So you could easily be remembering that too.
That's
Might all be part of it.
yeah,
Yeah.
crazy.
Well, we've kind of got you on the barometer here for Gargoyle. So before I get into the history of it, I want to ask Jamal kind of where are you coming from with your experience with gargoyles?
Well, I remember watching this as a kid, but I think other than, again, this may have been another one of those cartoons that I had to sit through it to get to Spider-Man or one of the cartoons I really wanted to watch.
Interesting.
It wasn't like in my top five.
Just
that's
not
for
your
sure.
thing. Okay.
Okay.
Interesting. That'll be good.
You were waiting for Hercules to come on, weren't you?
Not Digimon and like
Digimon, yeah.
and
Oh, don't even get Dave started on
those
No,
Digimon.
don't.
cartoons when I was like Sonic was still on like.
Yeah, Sonic, and then we're definitely going to cover like the Digimon. We're going to cover all the kind of like Pocket Monster shows at some point. We'll probably make a month out of it because there's so much craziness
Oh,
that
boy.
goes
But I
on.
definitely remember this cartoon.
Oh,
like
man.
just being on it, like my TV would be on, and I'd be like, "Oh, I'm catching up on this."
Dude,
So I
yeah,
have
yeah.
to say this as a fun fact
Shoot.
for Jamal is, so having lived with Dave for a short period of
Oh,
time.
no, I knew
and
this was coming.
Having known him for
Long
over
time.
10 years now.
Yep.
Humble brag.
Humble brag.
Yeah, not everybody
Friend-
can know me for that long.
Friendship brag. Dave has a particular Digimon that he
Oh,
loves
no.
to scream, and so he just will randomly walk around and he just go Kabu Terrymon.
Oh, he was my favorite. You stole my thunder.
Well,
jerk.
I'm not gonna pimp you into doing it, man.
Well, I mean, you don't have to pimp real hard. I say it at the drop of a hat. Hello and welcome to Saturday Morning Cartoons, the weekly podcast that revisits, reviews, and ridicules some of the world's weirdest animated series. Coming to you from high atop Castle Wyvern, I'll be your host, Dave Trumbore. Joining me as always, my co-host, Sean Hoboken Ellis. How are you tonight, sir?
David, I'm doing well. How about yourself, man?
Doing pretty good, buddy. I'm excited about this. Episode 50, ladies and
Episode
gentlemen.
50.
We're not fucking around. Episode 50. Hey,
I mean, we've been fucking around for 49 episodes.
Yeah, this is a warm-up.
We're gonna nail this.
this is the serious talk now. Hey, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you have a couple of wingmen over on your side of things to help out tonight.
I do.
Yeah.
I have local improviser and comedian Jamal Newman, who's
Hello.
returning.
Oh,
Welcome back.
shout out to all wall paintings.
And we have local DC area artist Melanie Harker, who is joining us for the first time.
Welcome to the show.
Hello. Thanks. Long time listener, first time caller.
Oh, I like it. Happy to have you. Happy to have you. Pop quiz, hotshot. What's your favorite episode so far?
That is Ren and Stimpy.
Really interesting.
Yeah, when I tell everybody to listen to this podcast, I say, okay, I know you should start chronologically, but really start with Ren and Stimpy.
Yeah, I would go with that and not chronologically because that first episode is a mess for a variety of reasons. So if I've got this straight, then Alex Capice is our number one draw to this show because he's been on literally one time.
Yeah, I didn't say that.
I'm hearing it. I'm hearing it come
No,
through.
but
No, that's
but
cool.
this-
Totally fine. Totally good guy, I guess. Whatever. Real
I
handsome
could have
devil.
sworn she also said she loved Jason Wheeled Warriors.
I think she did say.
She did say that
She said
loved
she
that
really
I
loved
caught
the
that.
Jason the Wild Warriors
Yeah, I
episode.
caught that.
And I
undertone.
love anything Allison Keen is on.
Oh, fantastic. All right, now we're all back in the good graces now.
Okay,
Yeah. Hey, just go listen to everything, guys.
doing well.
Listen to everything we do.
Oh my god, but 50th episode.
Yeah,
and
crazy.
I could not be more excited.
Dude, and I literally just got a 1 year birthday notice from our, when we signed on and we did all our subscriptions to all this stuff so we can bring you guys this podcast each and every week. I just got a sort of like a 1 year happy birthday anniversary thing from them. So that was kind of cool and kind of crazy to think that we've been doing this for a year. So yeah,
Who did you get the email from?
just random bot